Today, Viltrox's amazing 135 1.8 lab prime lens. We'll compare it a bit to Nikon's Plena. Plus, I'll give you my initial impressions of Nikon's new Z5II. Well, hey everyone, it's Hudson. Welcome to this week's video. So today we're going to talk a fair bit about Viltrox's amazing 135 1.8 prime. We'll compare it, as I said, to Nikon's Plena. But before we do that, I want to talk just a little bit about my first impressions of Nikon's new little Z5II, their sort of entry-level full-frame camera. I got it so that I could do, a review of it, a setup guide, understand it really well when I encounter it with workshop participants. It's not necessarily a camera I intend to keep, given the stable of cameras that I have currently. I bought it with the little 51.4 prime that Nikon's offering now. It's a smaller, lighter, non-S wide aperture prime, and I'm really liking the combination. I think that this is a great camera for a whole lot of people. People that are on a bit of a budget would be choosing between the Z50 and this. I think people who love action sports and wildlife and want to work with long lenses and have lots of reach, the Z50, the APS-C, the smaller sensor, makes a ton of sense. It can actually give you more reach from smaller lenses, longer, gives you a more effective reach from the same focal length. But for those who love landscapes and wide-angle lens work and aren't so focused on speed, I think, action, wildlife, those kinds of things, I think that the Z5II could make a lot of sense, particularly for those working in low lit situations handheld, because you wind up with better high ISO noise performance from the full frame sensor. Those, again, working with wide angle lenses, it's just nicer to work with a 14mm versus a 9mm trying to emulate a 14mm. Just in real world wide angle work, the larger the sensor, the nicer the result can be. So this is a really compelling alternative, and it has exactly the same beautiful 24 megapixel sensor as the ZF, which I personally adore. And it has all the autofocusing capability of the latest X-Speed processors from the Z8, Z9, Z5II, ZF, Z6 III. It isn't going to have that super high speed capability with bursts and recording that you get with Compact Flash Express B and the partially stacked sensor in the Z6 III or the stacked sensor in the Z8, Z9. But I don't think that's what this camera is for. It's for those on a little bit of a budget wanting a smaller camera. Maybe it's for those wanting to back up one of those other cameras. It's got dual SD cards, which is nicer than the micro SD combo in the ZF. It's got a great grip. It's got those user modes, user 1, 2, and 3, lots of programmable buttons. The flip screen, which I personally love, I know that's a bit controversial, but I think all your new Nikon cameras are going to come with the flip screens. If Nikon's listening, I'd love for them to adopt the flip and tilt, like Sony's done with its latest high-end cameras. Great viewfinder. It's not got the Z6 III's gonzo, super bright, more megapixel viewfinder, but it's got the great Nikon Z viewfinder that all of us love and adore. Really, really nice performing little camera. I'll have more to say about it next week. I'll do more of an in-depth review and a setup guide for it, but I like this camera. It's really, really sweet. Okay, so setting that aside, let's talk Viltrox. Let's talk big, long, fast primes. What are these lenses for? Traditionally, they're for portrait photographers to do headshots. I'm just gonna, while I'm talking, mount this up on the Z5II. Make sure we're turned off. I tend to like to use long, fast primes like this, either 135s or 105s or sometimes 85s, for sort of more discreet street shooting, for more portraits at night, details on city streets at night, separating subjects from backgrounds, even sometimes from a little bit of a distance when people aren't as aware, more candid style shots where the subject really pops from the background. Finding details in scenes, sometimes even in the landscape, where only part of the scene is really all that interesting, and isolating it with a really high quality prime. The longer I photograph, the more I love primes. You just come to realize that the optical engineers can do more image quality magic with a prime lens than they can with a zoom. Zooms have quality constraints, just having to do more all at the same time. Whereas if you're dedicatedly designing something to work at one focal length, you can really make that a sweet focal length. So I fell in love in Scotland a couple years ago with Nikon's Plena when it first released. I sent it back because I love my 105 1.4 f-mount lens so much and I couldn't rationalize it. And then time went by and I missed it and I wound up buying my own Plena. And then Viltrox hit me up to test the 135 1.8 lab lens when they released it, or before they released it. I actually had it for a while before it was released in the wild, and I took it to Death Valley and Joshua Tree with me and was really sort of shocked with some of the image quality results. So before we get into talking about differences between these two lenses, let's look at image quality of this lens and how it compares to that lens. So I'm going to jump over on the computer and show you some images. All right, so I got a whole bunch of images here, both from the Viltrox 135 1.8 and from the Nikon Plena. And I went ahead and I color-coded all of the Nikon Plena images purple. So you can see the gray color-coded images are the Viltrox and the purple are the Nikon. And we're just gonna kind of look through some of these images. And I think the results might surprise you a bit. You know, I'm gonna show you some images that are sort of the headshots that you'd think of 135s being made for, as well as some images you wouldn't necessarily think about using a 135 for. Now, I took the Plena when it was brand new and was testing it to Scotland and was so impressed I wound up buying one for myself this last year just because I kind of missed not having it after the test review was over. And then Viltrox came out with the 135 1.8 and asked me to test a pre-production sample, which had one glaring little glitch. I'll show it to you right now. And the only glitch I could actually find with this lens, which is that instead of 135, it listed itself as a 16 millimeter, some kind of a little mistake. But then they did send me a production copy to test to show me that that is rectified, and indeed in this later production sample it says the correct metadata 135 millimeters, so that's not something to worry about. But let's just run through, and I'm going to actually show you some of the images from the 135 Viltrox first off. And this was in Death Valley during our workshop this year. Rick looking a little bit, you know, exasperated potentially with me, who knows, but just to show you, you know, wide open, this thing is nice and sharp, you know, kind of for its traditional purpose, thinking about that headshot, thinking about getting that nice shot of someone with the background just blown to smithereens. Here I am, you know, at a bit of a distance, but with that 1.8 aperture on the 135, just beautiful rendering of the out of focus details. I love this one, a Sibby, you know, one of our workshop participants, looking out off the dunes here. Again, you know, if you've got a 1.8 aperture lens, I love shooting wide open in these situations. And here was just a test I did. We were up in the Red Cathedral section, up kind of above Golden Canyon, looking down just after sunset. The sun had just rimmed down behind the Panamints, and looking at how sharp this lens renders edge to edge, wide open at 1.8. Everything was out at essentially the same distance from me, and I'm sorry, that there's nothing wrong edge to edge with that frame. Pretty darn incredible for wide open at 1.8. Stopping down a little bit, doing some extractive landscapes on this one beautiful morning out in Mesquite Dunes. You know, f11, again, you know, just beautiful, sharp rendering. Yeah, this lens really does handle nicely. Whether it could, I wonder, you know, how does it do tracking moving subjects? Well, we didn't have a whole bunch of wildlife in Death Valley, but this one raven did come out and sort of swooped around us in the Devil's Golf Course one early morning, and I tracked it. I think I took about 25 frames as it flew around me, and never once did it lose focus for even an instant. It's really fun having a lens like this where you can just separate your subject from the background at a distance. I was standing clear across the parking lot from CHAP up here at Dante's View, and just being able to blur those hills. It actually blurred them so much I stopped down to f5.6 so that you could see the details in them. And f5.6 is way sharp. Again, you know, the kind of headshot, traditional shot, the 135 is just made for. You know, here's Rick playing around with his 51.4, I think, on his Sony with Civvy and Pete, just doing some kind of fun shots. Rick again. But I think it's just wonderful. Here's another example of chap out in the landscape. This is actually in Joshua Tree, the next workshop, and just being able to like separate your subject from the background. I was quite a long ways away from him, but f1.8, I mean, woo, and then step closer, and you really get that background separation. You know, it's just super cool stuff. Oh, one final image. Here's one you probably aren't going to expect to see the 135 put to, but this is a, let's see how many megapixels this is. I think it's about 300 megapixels. It's 20,000 pixels by 11,670 pixels, basically. This is a multi-row panorama shot up at Zabriskie Point at dawn, just before the light hit the foreground here in Golden Canyon. And I shot this, let's see, what was my setting? F8, just, you know, make everything sharp. Everything's basically out at infinity from me. I mean, look at the detail in this image. And again, let's just back out from it. I mean, pretty darn amazing. Yeah, this is just a great quality piece of glass, no doubt about it. You know, the Plena, of course, also infamous for its beautiful bokeh, nice sharp rendering. Here's my daughter Pepper, back when I first had the Plena. I'll let you see the settings here. f1.8, of course. Why wouldn't I be shooting at f1.8? Love the Plena. This was in Joshua Tree. I was kind of bouncing back and forth between the Plena and the Viltrox and Joshua Tree. Again, that ability to just separate the background, both lenses exhibit it. Work handheld in low light, keeping it at a 1/30th of a second with that vibration reduction. This was in Glasgow when I was first testing the Plena. The ability to walk the streets at night and handhold, you know, get these kind of street scenes, get that subject background separation. Rick and David, I was quite a ways away from them. I don't think they noticed I was taking pictures. You know, just those kinds of, those moments that you capture from a bit of a distance and yet make your subject stand out. Both lenses do that magnificently. Halloween with my kids, you know, the bokeh just, wow, wide open. And then just to showcase that, you know, the Plena doesn't have that locked up, here's a shot with the Plena with my son Pike out near our porch with some little string lights. And here's the Viltrox 135. You know, the Plena has slightly rounder bokeh as it gets into the edge. It starts getting a little bit of football shape. The Viltrox does a little bit more, but beautiful. There's nothing wrong. Very, very similar in a lot of ways, actually. You know, I look at these two lenses and it's difficult to really separate one from the other when it comes to image quality. They're both fabulous. All right, so I think from a performance standpoint, you can see that this is a rocking performer. You know, the Plena is sort of the industry standard 135. It's amazing. Nikon chose to name this lens because it's so beautiful, the way that it renders the world. And it's a pretty amazing lens for Viltrox to come gunning for. When Viltrox offered me to test this lens before it had been officially released, I told them I would only do it if I could compare it to the Plena because I'm such a Plena fan, and they said, go for it. So clearly they were proud of it, and deservedly so. You know, if you compare the two lenses, the biggest, most glaring difference between the two is the price. The Plena is on sale right now for $900, a little bit less. And they have it in stock. I'm putting a link at B&H on my website and in this video's description. If you click the title or show more, you can see links to the gear that I'm talking about, the Z5II, the Plena, the Viltrox Lab, and you can also click right here to go over to my website and see all the links to products that I use and recommend, and those help me out. So I thank you over at hudsonhenry.com/ATS links. But this one's $900, as I said, whereas the Plena is normally $2,500 and is on sale right now for $2,300. So you can buy more than two of these for one of these. Now, granted, in 20 years, which one's going to be the collector's item? It's probably the Plena. The other differences between the two, the Plena weighs a ½ pound less. It's a little bit wider The Viltrox is a little bit longer, very minuscule amounts of differences, but a half a pound is significant. It's a half a pound lighter. I think that if I remember correctly, the Viltrox weighed in at just over 2 pounds, whereas or maybe 3 pounds, and the Plena was 2.5 pounds. They're not light. They're big chunky pieces of lots of glass and metal, and they're both built really, really well. I like the hoods for both of these lenses, and I'll give Viltrox mad props because the initial sample, the pre-production sample that I got, I did not like the way that the hood fit in the bayonet mount. You could just kind of keep spinning it. The new version, the production version that they sent, which not only fixed that 16 millimeter metadata error and now says 135, has these 2 dots. You put it in on the first dot, turn it, goes into the second dot. It doesn't lock, but it's nice and snug and you can't turn past it. And it's velvet lined and substantial feeling. It's a really nice hood. The Plena is a little bit lighter weight, just black plastic ribbed on the inside. It doesn't have that kind of nice velvet feel of the Viltrox. But again, you know, it's got white dots line up. It clicks to lock. There's a push button to release. You can't release it unless you push the button, which is nice. I don't know. I might give it to the Viltrox just from the fit and finish and feel of their hood. Both of them take 82 millimeter filters and lens caps, which is nice. And with long lenses like this, you can stack 82 millimeter filters out in front of them without worrying. It's not like a wide angle where it's reaching out. It's more of a rifle shooting straight out. So you can work really easily with 82 millimeter filters without needing to upsize to 95. The only negative thing I can say about the Viltrox in comparison to the Plena, both are really well made. If I shake the Plena when it's off the camera, it's rock solid. The Viltrox has something that wobbles around in there. I'm pretty sure it's the vibration reduction system. If it's mounted on the camera or with the camera turned off or loose in your bag and you shake it, you feel something kind of moving around in there. When you turn the camera on, dink, you shake it, there's no play at all. I'm pretty sure it's some kind of integration of the vibration reduction that combines with the image stabilization. It's really allowed me to shoot some shots at low shutter speeds, 1/15 of a second. No problem with this lens and the Nikon ZF's amazing in-body image stabilization. Some of the cool things about the Viltrox, it has a color LCD screen, unlike the Plena, which just has the beautiful cursive script that says Plena, and has a focus on and autofocus on and off switch and a couple of function buttons. This one has a couple of function buttons, an autofocus on and off switch, a beautiful LCD viewfinder, a full focus limiter, short focus limiter, medium focus limiter. So you really have control over how far is this thing reaching out and focusing. And then it has this nice clickable control ring. The Nikon doesn't have clickable feel to it. Say you're using this for aperture, each click could be 1/3 of a stop. You can turn that off. If you're a video shooter, it can be smooth. So really nice control layout. And another thing that impressed me with the Viltrox is Viltrox has an app, and when you fire up this lens on any of the Nikon cameras, the app will find the lens via Bluetooth. It has a little Bluetooth transmitter in it, and you can update firmware right through the phone app. It works great. I've tried it without any problem. And you can also reprogram the LCD splash screen so that when you turn on your camera or wake your camera up, the splash screen can say something other than Viltrox. I have it say Hudson, which is, gimmicky, but kind of cool. Got to say, they definitely are innovating. It's a great lens. Again, for the same sort of person that I would recommend the Z5II, someone who wants high performance on a bit more of a budget, it's hard to ignore this particular lens. So that's it for now. I think for those ardent viewers who watch every week and notice things in the background, the big printer behind me is a different color than it used to be. Rick and I and our good friend Mark, along with a couple other guys, did a massive job last week with switching out our old Epson 9900, which Mark now has in his lovely home, and bringing in the brand new 9570, which is the updated version that has separate lines for photo black inks and matte black inks and has nicer paper handling, and it's super exciting. And we're going to be running our printing workshop with 6 awesome folks here in the studio next week, and I'm really excited to make some big prints on that thing during the process. So we'll share some more about that too. Look for that in the not so distant future, both the story of getting that thing up the stairs as well as how our printing workshop goes. They're always a blast. any time you're curious about workshops, whether it's printing or a destination workshop, make sure you reach out to Rick at hudsonhenry.com. He's the guy for that. He coordinates all the workshops. I just help plan, design them, show up, and Rick tells me who's going to be there. So he's really the one to talk to about that stuff. All right, everybody. So I hope you're all out there staying safe, staying creative. We'll see you next week.